Hey, how's it going, everyone? Hopefully you guys are having a good day today. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how Creed 3 is a perfect movie. Almost. Creed 3 is the directorial debut of Michael B. Jordan. This is the first legit huge movie that he's directed. A lot of people don't know that he's directed other films in the past, not necessarily as high profile films, but he's directed some films. So he does have a particular style to him, but this is the first time that they've allowed him to direct something that's this massive and this expansive, especially since he has the task of taking on a Creed franchise project without Sylvester Stallone as Rocky in this movie. There's been a lot of legal drama going on with the Rocky character and the rights that Sylvester Stallone does not agree with, and he's pretty pissed off about, so he's not returning in this film of Creed 3. Without Rocky in this movie surprisingly delivered what I think is almost a perfect movie. With that being said, this is the first Creed movie that actually felt like Adonis's own personal journey. He is not overshadowed by Rocky in this movie because, well, Rocky's not in this movie. This is the first actual movie where he can establish his own name and his own overall character in this movie, as the plot definitely connects to his past and essentially leads into his future, and it definitely shows a different side to Adonis that we have not seen in these movies thus far. Story has a very simple tale to it, where it's basically the old buddy from his past meets to him in the future, and basically he did him dirty in the past and he has to reconcile for some past mistakes that happened. Essentially what happened in the past between Adonis and the character of Damien, Jonathan Majors, is essentially they were going to boxing matches in the past as kids, and Damien was a really good boxer, but one of these days fate led them into a very bad scenario with the police, and essentially Damien took the rap and Adonis ran away, leaving him alone, leaving him to feel betrayed in those cells for all those years. Essentially when he finally comes out, he's coming back to get it all. Jonathan Majors as Damien in this movie is phenomenal. His acting style fits so well for someone who just came out of prison that there are certain tics that his character has in the movie that makes me feel slightly uncomfortable, and that was the point, was that you never knew what he was thinking and never knew what he was going to say, because at some point in the movie I was expecting him to get pretty pissed off at Adonis and start snapping on him, but the way he played him in this movie was phenomenal, and the way his character is able to manipulate everything into working the way he wants to is making for one of the best villains in the Rocky franchise besides Apollo Creed before he turned good. I believe that Damien in this movie is the best Rocky franchise villain besides Adonis. Did I say Adonis? I meant Apollo. He can be sadistic at times, but he's also a very understandable character as you understand his backstory. And the way Jonathan Majors plays his character is phenomenal. Especially during his boxing matches, you can tell his style of boxing is much more aggressive, much more angry. He also uses cheap tactics to win his first boxing match, as he uses knees and elbows, which he's not supposed to do. But the way he does the fight shows his desperation and how angry he is and how much he wants that title. This all ties back into Adonis' story, Michael B. Jordan, who essentially is phenomenal in this movie as well. This is the first movie where they fully explore Adonis' past, and he feels like he has to confront his past, both figuratively and literally, as he has to fight Dame in the ring at some point in the movie, and circumstances lead to that moment that ultimately leads to an ultimate showdown. Adonis' family has expanded since Creed 2 in the sense that now he has a daughter on top of that. And it's such an interesting dynamic between his daughter, because his daughter is getting into fights at school. He basically wants to teach his daughter how to defend herself and teaches her boxing, and she's deaf, so they have to do sign language with her. And the dynamics that they have between Michael B. Jordan and this little girl, this kid actress, I'm sorry I don't know the name, but It's great stuff, and it does feel like a natural development in Adonis' story because he's getting older. And that's something that the movie makes a point in, is the fact that he's retired, he's getting older, and he's a dad. He's established this like great life with Tessa Thompson's character, and he's making his own legacy. He's made his own legacy. And the character motivations in this movie are very understandable, especially since I think the most understandable motivations, in my opinion, come from the main villain of Damien. You understand where he comes from the entire movie. He was done dirty in the past. Well, granted, they were kids, but even then, wouldn't you be pretty pissed off if you were in a scenario like that with the police involved and your boy just left you? I'm pretty sure you'd be pretty furious. And this boy happened to learn a majority of his stuff from you, and now he's got the belt, and now he's a champion of the world. The title that you wanted since your childhood, he has it from skills that you had, and he left you behind. It's very understandable at why Jonathan Majors would want to probably beat the crap out of Adonis. Every Rocky movie has been predictable on some level, but the stories and talent in those movies has been so good that they still have stood the test of time and still have made their mark within the movie world. The Rocky movies are so good that everybody who watches them always feels a way of motivation in their life. And this movie absolutely does the same thing. Now, notice how I said this movie was almost perfect. Without Rocky, there is a lot of heart missing in this movie. Essentially in scenes such as when Adonis's mother passes away, Rocky should have been there. That's a character that should have been there, and because of Sylvester's lack of involvement in this movie, it does feel very weird that Rocky would not be there. Unless he was dead, which they did not mention in this movie, that felt very, very off, and it didn't feel right within this world that they've established. And also on top of that, it did feel very unnecessary for Adonis's mom to die in this movie. It served no purpose whatsoever other than to mimic something that happened prior with Mickey's death in Rocky 3. Except it didn't feel quite as emotional because it didn't feel earned, and it didn't feel like it was necessary to the overall story. Hopping back on some of the positives, I think that the music in this movie is phenomenal. Every scene feels like the music mixes well, especially the fact that they played Nipsey with Damien's first introduction in the ring in this movie was perfect, because the lyrics that they had in that song worked perfectly with what's going on within Damien's character, and it fit perfectly within the soundtrack. And there are hints of the Creed track from the prior two, but this establishes its own track, it's its own thing, and it works perfectly for the story that they're trying to tell. There are also some anime influences in this movie as well. Michael B. Jordan has talked about that, and particularly there are influences of Dragon Ball Z in this movie.
I need you to start.
And it does work very well. There's other influences as well, as I'm sure, not just Dragon Ball Z, but there's some things within the story that works as well. It works into those anime influences as well. For example, Victor Drago. Victor Drago in this movie is kind of like the Vegeta or Bakugo in this movie, where essentially it's a rival. And he helps a Creed train so he can prepare for Damien as well, which I thought was a very interesting dynamic to happen in this movie. Even though there are some story beats that do have some problems, like the mom's death and the lack of Rocky involvement and some other elements that I think could have been fleshed out a bit more, this is almost a perfect movie. Whether or not it's a Rocky movie, that's very arguable, and I can understand when people say it doesn't feel like one, but that's the whole point. It's a Creed movie. This does serve its own purpose in establishing more of the character of Adonis and the character of Damien. Two phenomenal characters in this movie. It's a very solid boxing movie, and so far this year, I'm saying this year, it's been the best movie that I've seen so far. And I highly recommend it if you guys have not seen Creed 3, which I don't know why you haven't. I mean, you guys will watch this. This has spoilers in this review. Then you guys need to go and see this movie. it's a phenomenal watch. And hopefully you guys enjoyed my video essay. I know it's another different style, but I want to kind of mimic something I did with the Batman video essay that I did last year. Love doing that, and I love doing these style of videos for you guys. Comment down below what you guys think of the new cut, and also comment down below what you guys thought of the overall movie if you guys have seen it already. I do believe that this should be the last Creed movie in the franchise. It's the perfect way to end Adonis's story, and I think that this movie did what it needed to do. Like, share, and subscribe today to join the Isaiahization.